Welcome, everyone. Okay, we're so glad you're here. My name is Jill Norcross. I'm the Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance, or NAVAHA. We're so happy you're here to join us. Joining me is my colleague, Hannah Matuda, Director of Policy and Programs. Aiden Franco, our intern, is here, and our other team member, Alice Hogan, is out this week, but our team is glad to have you. This is our second annual virtual bus tour. Glad that you all found us. We really hope to show you today some examples of affordable housing developments and programs, and we really appreciate your interest in the subject. I think for those of you working in the field as advocates, practitioners, supporters, you really understand that even people who are generally supportive of the concept of affordable housing can often feel differently when affordable housing is proposed to be developed in their community. So we hope that this bus tour helps you to see the quality of construction in two examples of recently opened affordable housing communities, in addition to a longstanding volunteer home repair program that works with lower income homeowners to ensure that they can stay in their homes. So we have a range of affordable housing solutions to meet the needs of residents at a variety of income levels and housing situations. So today you're going to hear from three presenters, and we're going to ask you to put your questions in the chat, and then we will moderate the Q&A after all three of our presenters speak, but feel free to just go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll go back to refer to those if you have a specific question for one of our presenters. We are recording this session and we'll make it available to everyone who registered, and we'll also be sharing the slide decks from our three presenters as well with you for a follow-up reference. So you have their bios, or you received the bios of our presenters in the invitation. So hopefully you saw that, or you can go back and refer to that if you want more information. But I'm thrilled to introduce Kim Hart of Good Works, who will be speaking about project in Ashburn in Loudoun County. Ryan Nash of APA is here speaking about a project in Fairfax County, and Catherine Dixon of Rebuilding Together DC Alexandria is going to be speaking about her volunteer home repair program for low-income homeowners in the city of Alexandria. So I want to leave plenty of time for these excellent presentations. So I am going to turn it over to Kim, and we're going to pull up his slide deck. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for going ahead and muting yourself if you already haven't, and feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So welcome, Kim. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks, Jill, for the invitation. I saw some familiar faces. Those guys that know more about me, kind of keep it to the good stuff, please. So Hannah's going to advance the slides for me. Hannah, if you go to the first slide, this magic school bus that we're taking, I'm going to start in Chicago. And here's the problem that we have. From the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when many people in our communities were growing up. This is Cabrini Green in Chicago. As you can see, almost 2,000 units on 35 acres. Modest, not great quality construction, no money to maintain it, and packed with people who were highly minority concentrated, very low income levels, very high crime levels. This is the example of the projects that poisoned the water for all of us. And I never start any presentation without saying, these days are not here. They're gone forever. They haven't built these buildings since the 80s. Most of them are being renovated, or they've gone away entirely, but this ghost will not go away. So when you talk about affordable housing, please be sure to say, these days are here no more. Hannah, if you could. So who lives in affordable housing, attainable housing now, as Madam Chair Randall likes to say? This is an apartment building that I built in 2019. Certified green building, LEED Platinum, by the way. 96% households are employed. Those that aren't are typically either retired or on annuities or handicapped. And income levels, this is the all rental, and this is affordable at 30 to 50% of area median income. Some folks that we have there, we have a few 8 or less project-based vouchers that will get down to below 30% of AMI. So we have folks as low as a household income of 20,000 a year to as high now of 50%. AMI now in our county is for a family of 4 or 5 up to 108,000 a year. So that's the band that we serve. Okay, Hannah. I just wanted to show you, these are all tax credit project, low-income housing tax credit projects I'm going to show you of various sizes. Here are a couple of small ones. The one on top is Piedmont Lane in the Plains, Virginia. I showed this one because that's actually a fourplex made to look like a big farmhouse. So if you have a challenge of fitting into the neighborhood, that's a good option. The lower is Levis Hill House in Middleburg. That's a 20-unit elderly property that also fits very well into the environment of Middleburg. So small projects are possible. Hannah, if you could go to the next one. Here we have a couple medium-sized one. On the upper slide, you see Washburn Place. This is 30 units in Marshall, Virginia. And as you can see, it's a nice townhouse approach, which can also fit well into a neighborhood if you need to. And on the lower is Shreveport Ridge, another tax credit project. This is in Brambleton, 98 units. And this is what you'd call a 2-over-1. This is where you have a unit, which is an apartment on one floor on the first floor. And then there's also a door on the ground level. You go up a flight of stairs, and the second and third floor are units. So is a single unit. So you'll have the living area and a kitchen on the second floor, and then bedrooms above. So those are a couple of mid-sized units. And then Hannah, if you would, some bigger projects. Upper level Stone Spring apartment, that's 128 units in 2 buildings. That's right across from the new hospital at Stone Springs on Route 50. And then below is the Woods. That's 202 units in 5 buildings, also at Brambleton. So as you can see, you can do tax credit projects at all sizes and types of layouts. But as you can see, it's all good quality construction, and we only build certified green buildings. Okay, Hannah. I'm going to not take a lot more time here, but I did want to dig a little bit into just one project. This is called Ashburn Chase, and this is a project built on Route 7, right across from Whole Foods, and across from the hospital on Route 7. This is 96 units. The building on the left is on slab, and the building on right is a podium with parking beneath. Again, this is rents at 30, 50, and 60% of AMI. And we do have 10 project-based vouchers from Loudoun County. This is also the first project that I know of in Loudoun County to actually have set-aside units for the developmentally disabled. We set aside 5 units in this project for that purpose, but it's gone so well that we're now up to, I think, 10 or 11 units that are actually used by the developmentally disabled. I'm going to dig into this because this is a project. You could go to the next slide, Hannah. First of all, this is 96 units. This is about an average, call it a 100-unit project, 96, 100-unit project. Back in 2019, when we built this is a $28 million project, all in, total development costs. And I've broken it down here so you can see what percentage goes to land, what percentage goes to construction, and what percentage goes to all those soft costs, including design, engineering, and paying for your money. You should know that in low-income housing tax credits, there's no subsidy paid to any renter. Any renter that lives with us has to have enough income to pay the rent. What we do have is we have an opportunity to have lower rents because of 2 things. One, we have to buy the land at a discount. I can't afford to pay market rate for land, and I find ways to do that with help through the zoning ordinance. and the requirement of zoning to require master developers, market rate developers to supply some affordable housing. I can get land at a discount for that. And also, most importantly, I can get a break on the money, the cost of the money. I can get low interest loans. I can get low income housing tax credits. I can get tax exempt bonds. I don't get any break on construction. So I pay the same prices as everybody else. So if I'm going to get a property below market rate, I have to be able to do that with discounts on the land, and that which I count. I need help from the jurisdiction to get that. And I also, the reason you hire me and Ryan is because we know how to go find that low interest and low cost money through the various government programs. That's where we spend the money. And here you see, this is, I don't mean this to be an eye chart, but you can look at this later in your, when you look at the slides. The reason I put this slide out is this is a project that utilizes both what we call two different funding programs at Virginia Housing. The 9% program and the 4% program, that has nothing to do with interest rates. It's just what they call them. That's a whole nother conversation to explain where the name came from. But on the left-hand side, you'll see that we get twice as many tax credits and half as much debt. On the right-hand side, you see we get less tax credits and more debt. So importantly, this is why Ryan and I are around, because we know how these programs operate. It's our job to win this money and bring it back to our localities. You'll also, very importantly, at the top of the slide where you compare the two, there's a thing called a gap. And Virginia Housing will not give us 100% of the money we need as tax credits or even as low interest loans. They want to see participation from the community and other sources. So those of you in the community who have an opportunity to come speak at these various chances, we have public hearings or so forth, that community support is just incredible for our local jurisdictions being willing to come up with this money to help us fill that gap. And those of you who live inside the Beltway have had very good jurisdictions that have done this for a long time and are good at it. Those of us out here in Loudoun County, I have to say that it took a long time for our jurisdiction to catch on, but starting about 6 years ago, we actually started to get them to set aside some money. 2 years ago, they actually put a line item in the budget. Then they increased that to half a penny, and now in this last budget cycle, it's up to a penny. So hats off to my friends at Loudoun County government who finally woke up and created the Loudoun County Housing Trust Fund, and now we have help filling that gap. So I'm going to, and then lastly, I don't have a slide for it, so you can take my slides down, but Jill asked me to mention, just last month, we had kind of a breakthrough. I've been working for many years trying to find a reason, some way that our jurisdiction could give an incentive for attainable housing. For a long time, our jurisdictions have had, I call it the stick. Any market rate developer that wants to have a rezoning has to supply a percentage of those units as attainable housing. That's a stick. They have to do it. It's a tax on the deal. In our last rezoning rewrite that we just did in Loudoun County, they made the stick bigger. They increased the percentage, but there has never been an incentive. I'm happy to say that I'm working on a project now called Atlantic Boulevard, and it's the first 100% affordable project without any market rate, without any retail, without any commercial. It's 100% affordable units, first one in Loudoun County that I can think of in 25 or 30 years. And because of that, I went to the Board of Supervisors and said, folks, we need to see, this could be the opportunity to be an incentive. Because this project is so special, Loudoun County has, for data centers, had a fast track process through the administrative review process. In other words, once your project is rezoned, you could have a fast track to get your site plan approved and get your building permits. That has existed for data centers for several years now. A couple years ago on my Waxbowl Apartments project, I was able to get fast track through the administrative process for that project. But nobody, even the data centers, had ever gotten fast track through the legislative process. That is the process of getting the rezoning done. A rezoning in Loudoun County now takes between 18 and 24 months and can cost roughly $1 million for a market rate developer or more to get that done. Because this is a 100% affordable project, the supervisors asked the county administrator got volunteers in planning and zoning to work with us. And from the time we submitted, from the time our rezoning application was approved for review until the time it was approved by the Board of Supervisors was 6 months. 6 months, which will save me hundreds of thousands of dollars in the rezoning process. So after being basically years behind the jurisdictions inside the Beltway, I'm proud to say that my little jurisdiction in Loudoun County has finally stepped up and done something nobody else has done, and that is to give expedited review through the legislative process. So with that, Jill, I think I covered it. I'm turning it back to you.
Kim, thank you so much. That was excellent. I think you framed your experience perfectly and just trying to kind of change the narrative for so many of advocates on this call who are, fighting those kind of, outdated perceptions of what affordable housing looks like in our community. So I want to commend you on your great work in Loudoun on the development side as an advocate and affecting real change on policy as well. And I'm thrilled about the fast-tracked pilot program that I hope gets extended, because it does, I think, for those of us who see housing as being, an immediate need in Northern Virginia right now, it is disheartening to know that a rezoning can take 18 to 24 months. So anything we can do to shorten that time frame and lower the cost for our affordable housing developers are certainly welcome. So thank you again for that. Now we're going to kind of drive that virtual bus over closer into Fairfax County. We are thrilled to have Ryan Nash with us from APA, another affordable housing developer working all over our region actually now. So Ryan, thanks for joining us and sharing more about ILDA's Overlook.
Great. Thank you, Jill, Hannah, and thank you everyone for joining today. So wanted to talk a little bit about APA as well as this new project that we just delivered in Fairfax County called ILDA's Overlook. My name is Ryan Nash. I'm a senior project manager with APA, and start off with a little bit about APA. We were formed a nonprofit in 1989, mission driven. We currently own 2,800 units and have another 1,200 plus under construction and another 1,100 in active pre-development. So we're fairly busy at the moment. We focus on, families earn between 30 to 60% AMI, opportunity and stability for our residents. And as you'll point out, we currently operate through a number of areas in the DMV, currently 5 separate jurisdictions. When I started APA 7 years ago, every one of our properties was entirely within Arlington County. Later that year, our board of directors made the decision that just to, kind of expand the footprint, and just because of limits of, local funds within Arlington County, we decided to branch out into additional jurisdictions. So we, in addition to Arlington, we have properties in Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Washington, D.C., and Montgomery County, Maryland. If you want to go to the next slide. And here's just, a brief sort of like snapshot of where we are within the region. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And wanted to sort of focus in on the average, just as far as what the APA residents are, sort of their economic makeup. The average annual income of an APA resident is just under $39,000. So I think it's very important that, that we need to keep providing this additional housing and just sort of focus on the needs of our residents. We do everything we can to sort of maximize the number of lower AMI units, 30% AMI, as many as we can. Doesn't always work with the numbers on every single project, but we certainly strive for that. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And then finally, part of the backbone of what we do at APA is our resident services team. We are dedicated to our residents. We have at least, one resident services coordinator at each one of our properties. And they do everything from, food delivery, working with residents on financial well-being, and then just ensuring, particularly during COVID, working with the individual residents to avoid, eviction. And we were able to, work with local jurisdictions as far as getting funds to minimize, eviction during COVID. And we had an extremely low rate. I don't think it was, next to zero that were evicted during COVID. And then since then, it's, remained low. So that's a little bit about APA, focusing specifically on this particular site, Ilda's Overlook. This whole project kind of came to being with one of my colleagues at APA, Mike Chiappa, who had worked with a number of folks at Erickson Senior Living. That's a for-profit senior living builder based, that has properties in multiple jurisdictions around the country. And they were building this sort of a much larger development within Fairfax County. It's located about 4.5 miles west of the Beltway and about 1 mile east of the George Mason University campus. And so one of the things that Fairfax County wanted to do as far as this, they approved the development, but they wanted to include some affordable senior housing as part of this. So Erickson, that's something they could have, done this on their own, but they reached out to APA and said, hey, we would like to partner with you to develop this affordable component of our larger site here off Braddock Road, which is called Woodley Chase. So if you look at the upper left-hand corner of the site, Braddock Road is the street kind of on the north of the site, but that is that little L-shaped building. That is where Ilda's Overlook is located. And then everything to the right of that is the Woodley Chase development, which is Erickson's market rate senior properties, and which is still under construction at this moment. A total of 80 units that we have at Ilda's Overlook. It's also we utilize both 4% and 9% LIHTC financing, 36 units on the 9% side and 44 units on the 4% side. And so this slide is just sort of a basic sort of show of like the multiple sources that we utilize for this. As far as the permanent debt, we've got about $8.2 million Freddie Tell. We're also able to get $18.6 million construction loan from Truist. Truist is also the equity investor that's working on the project. And then as we're going through, we also were able to find money that we're able to put solar panels on the roof. Project is delivered. Solar panels have not yet gone on, but we're going to be starting those here in probably the next couple weeks. We also were able to get some additional funding from DHCD, both the Virginia Housing Trust Fund and High E funds. And as I mentioned, 9%, 4% LIHTC financing covered a good portion of it. We also applied for Federal Home Loan Bank, the amount of $750,000. That came in after closing, and that was able to supplement us for some, cost overruns that we had during the project. And then we also are looking to get access to these 45L credits. This is part of the Build Back Better Act, and we're working through equity investor finalizing that. And we completed this property. Construction completed February of 2024, but we're looking to go to permanent loan closing around November, December of this year. So that was kind of it. I guess go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is just sort of a quick image of what we do on these twinning deals when you need to get both 4% and 9% low-income housing tax credit financing. They basically legally, you end up structuring it as two separate buildings, two separate projects with different federal ID numbers. When you look at it, it's a single building, but just the complexities to get that additional financing to get your additional density requires, sort of a lot of additional paperwork with these 4% and 9% divisions. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide. So we'll just kind of focus on the remaining are just going to be some images of the property. These are some aerial photos that were taken fall of 2023. The project was mostly completed by fall of 2023. We didn't get our certificates of occupancy until February of the next year. We did have some supply chain issues with switchgear. that not only impacted this project, that's impacting a number of our projects, and it's frankly just an industry-wide issue that everyone seems to be confronting. So these were some that were taken with an aerial drone that our general contractor Harkinsworth worked with during construction. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And then here's some of the interior photos. So piggybacking on somewhat of what Kim said, as far as, affordable housing, how it's changed, since the, 60s to the 80s, where it was originally, kind of just public housing. It's kind of a completely different ballgame these days. These are, not designed to look like, affordable properties. These are designed to look essentially like market rate properties. So if you walk in through the photo on the upper left is just coming in through the main entrance. To the right of that is our community room. Lower left-hand corner is the multi-purpose room, which our resident services team uses for multiple programs with the residents. And then the lower right-hand corner is sort of like a business seating area that is connected directly to the lobby. So the next slide, and these are just top two photos are just photos from the model units, just to give you an idea of the the space that we have in those units. And then the lower two are just of some of the corridors within. As you notice, we have different paint scheme by floor. We had done that at a recent senior project in Loudoun County as well. We had gotten feedback from a number of folks said with the senior buildings, people tended to like the slightly different color schemes depending on the floor you're on. So we've implemented that. And that's about it. So I will leave it open to questions after Catherine is done. But thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it and all the amazing work APA does, here in Northern Virginia and across the region. I think you'll see from the photos that Kim and Ryan shared, it's really important to note that the quality of construction it's a market rate product but for the investments and subsidies that are included, you wouldn't know that this was affordable housing in your community. And I think for so many of us that do the advocacy work, we hear about the challenges, and I appreciate the comments in the chat and the questions in the chat as well. But, we hear about this before these communities are developed, but once they are up and operating, we rarely hear any neighborhood complaints or issues about these homes for people because they are exactly that, a market rate product that just has special financing. So thank you again for that. And now I'd like to turn it over to driving the bus over to the city of Alexandria to Catherine Dixon, who is with Rebuilding Together DC Alexandria. And Kath, we thought it was important to highlight not only programs and projects that create new supply for affordable housing, but also to highlight programs that help keep people stably housed in their homes. And so really appreciate you, Catherine, sharing information about your program and what you have happening in the city of Alexandria.
Thank you, Jill. So as Jill said, I am with Rebuilding Together, and our service territory is the DC Alexandria area. We are one of about 120 affiliates across the nation that predominantly help people stay in their homes by providing them with free home repairs. So we have been around since 1986. Again, mostly serving the city of Alexandria. About 6 years ago, we expanded into DC as well. And we maintain homes for homeowners with low incomes, and I'll get into some detail about that. We provide the critical home repairs that eliminate health and safety issues in the home. And again, our main goal is to allow our low-income clients to stay in their homes as long as they can and as long as they would like. So our core program, and frankly, I think this is what all of the affiliates across the nation have in common, this Safe and Healthy Homes Repair program. And as you see on the slide, all of our repairs are free to our low-income clients. They certainly have to prove to us that financially they qualify. And quite frankly, the average household income for our clients is just under $25,000 for two people living in the home. So our AMI honestly hovers well below 30. So examples of items that we will replace or repair range from a roof to your HVAC system to stairwells to simple things like making sure the stair railing going down into your basement is secure, making sure the lights on your porch work and the address numbers on the front of your house are easily seen. And again, all of these repairs are provided free to our clients, and we complete those tasks through a combination of contractors and volunteers. So a volunteer might be able to hang address numbers, but we're certainly not going to put a volunteer on to make a roof repair. Of the 300, 350 projects we do a year, I would say, gosh, 320 of them have contractors in the homes. Many of the clients we work with have just neglected their home repair or deferred their home maintenance. So what could have been a roof repair has now turned into a roof replacement. And again, contractors are doing all of that major work. So the impact we have, because we survey clients after our work is done, 95% of those that we have helped are more likely to stay in their homes. 91% reported feeling safer in their home, being more easily able to navigate through their home. And then 20% of the clients have seen a doctor fewer times after our repairs are made. And even though we will help any low-income homeowner, for whatever reason, over the years, we have ended up helping mostly older adults. So the average age of our clients is 73. But again, that's not to say that a 30-year-old low-income homeowner couldn't apply for our services as well. Just two quick pictures here. The top one of our older adult clients was having trouble, quite frankly, lifting her legs to get over the tub rim. So we installed a close to zero threshold shower. And then the bottom picture shows that a rusty stairwell was replaced by a sturdy back porch and then steps going down to this person's backyard where she parks her car. So that is it for my presentation. I am happy to answer questions when we get to that part.
Great, Catherine, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing about your programs. I think, sometimes we're focused on supply side solution and production, so it's really great to hear about long time programs like yours that are helping keep people safely and stably housed in the community, which is really important, especially for those who, as they age and need safer choices. So thank you for that. That alleviates the pressure, right, on our other new supply of housing if people can stay in their homes. So great. Well, I appreciate everybody's willingness to kind of keep their presentation short so we can really spend the remaining time together answering your questions. So we welcome you to put your questions in the chat. We already have some great questions, so I'll just kind of moderate this session. and we'll just kind of call on our presenters to help answer them. So thank you again for all of our speakers for their time and willingness to pull this together. So first question from Katie is, in the organizations where she works with tenants in older affordable housing developments that have been preserved. They experience a lot of neglect from management and maintenance issues. What do you think are the root causes of this recurring problem? So I'm not sure if Kim or Ryan or even Catherine can answer that question for kind of our older housing stock that Kim might have referenced before, what you think the problems were with the inability to kind of either neglect from management or any long-term maintenance issues.
Well, I'm gonna draw to, this is not my bailiwick, so I get to make a mistake here, but I would draw a distinction between the work that Catherine does, where she's actually helping homeowners that are in their homes, which I think is wonderful work that she does. I think, Katie, and you came on, I see, so if you can, the problem is that in the old days, the projects had their problems, but they're starting to diminish. And for those of us that are now building units under the low-income housing tax credit program, we're audited every year. Our properties are actually inspected every year by Virginia Housing and by the tax credit investors. So we're required to keep the quality of our units up. The problem is that there are still bad person landlords out there. And, you know, that's, and maybe Catherine knows more about that than I do, but, you know, in those situations, it really is just a matter of perhaps legal services or others that could actually help those folks try to deal with landlords that may be taking too much money out of the property and just not caring what it looks like. So they truly give us all a bad name, and I wish they didn't exist, but they are out there and they take advantage of people.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I'll go ahead and just kind of add to that. I think, you know, as Kim pointed out, in some cases, there's just, you know, some landlords that are just, you know, kind of some bad actors that, you know, that could be a root cause of it. But I think in some ways, the sort of part of the change of just sort of how affordable housing has changed since, you know, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when they referred to it essentially as public housing. Back then, prior to the 9% and 4% low-income housing tax credits, which were all part of the 1986 tax reform bill. It used to be back then that the bulk of the affordable housing was funded either by, you know, public housing authorities or sometimes indirectly through HUD. And so, you know, the construction, the maintenance, and everything was basically done through public dollars. And like, you know, kind of any sort of public system, depending on what the budget years were, sometimes, you know, they had less money to put into that. And I think, unfortunately, what tended to happen was that, you know, they didn't, you know, necessarily staff these properties to what they should have been, or put the amount of money that they needed as far as maintenance. And so a lot of these properties did kind of, you know, start falling apart. There's a lot of neglect. And I think one of the things that's changed with the current, you know, affordable housing, LIHTC funding, is that it's sort of the individual owners have a stake in it, more so than I think in some ways that, like, you know, just the individual jurisdictions would have in it. But yeah, the you know, the owner has their own stake in it. The financing partners all have a stake in it. And to Kim's point, these are very, you know, heavily audited as well. So you know, I think there's just, you know, kind of more of a focus on, you know, making sure that these things don't happen. I know at least with APA properties, our average vacancy rate hovers between about like 2 to 3%. So we wouldn't have those numbers if we, you know, weren't able to provide those services to our residents. So we certainly on our end, you know, try to, you know, make sure that that type of thing doesn't happen.
Thank you, Kim and Ryan. Not sure, Catherine, if you have any other comments. Yeah, I know you usually do with the homeowners. So yeah, I just, you know, will say that the low-income housing tax credit program is the #1 program that we have for affordable housing production. And we are always fighting those kind of ghosts of the past programs that didn't, you know, include investments for upkeep and maintenance. And I think we've all learned our lesson, and hopefully the regulation, frankly, surrounds the affordable housing tax credit program and the audits and the investors are keeping, ensuring that there are continued operating reserves and the ability to pay for ongoing maintenance and repairs. So thank you for that.
I'm going to step in and say, just so everybody knows, you've heard us say LIHTC, LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credit. That's why it's called LIHTC. Sorry.
No, oh, thank you. I think part of, what we face all the time as housers and other industries is the myriad of acronyms. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Yes, that is the program that we use most frequently to develop and preserve affordable housing in our communities across the country. Okay, so moving on, had a comment, I guess, and a question maybe for our housing development and program partners on the call, is that there's state of Virginia legislation coming is Yes in God's Backyard, which gives faith communities the right to build on their property, which avoids the need to go to appeal to zoning boards. So if we can get that passed this year, are the housing enthusiasts supporting this effort? So maybe that's a question for all of us on the call, but I don't know. I know APA has done faith-based development many times. Ryan, maybe you can talk about that and if you support this legislation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, as an affordable housing, just to make the numbers work, we usually are not able to pay, full price market rate for land. So in a number of cases, we have 2 properties in Arlington that have been completed, Gilliam Place, and then Ballston Station, which is we did in partnership with Central United Methodist Church, where we did work with faith-based organization that owned the land, was able to sort of work with us, gave it to us. We rebuilt the property, built new church space for them, and it's worked out really well. So yeah, I would say that APA is going to continue to work with faith-based communities and certainly supports it.
That's great. Yeah. Anybody else have any other comments or thoughts, Kim or Catherine?
Well, I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party, but I think Jill is going to have a tough go because I can't think of any jurisdiction that's going to want to give up their right to vote on any rezoning. So I think you're going to find a lot of resistance from the municipalities and all of the jurisdictions to this. I take my hat off to Ryan for the work they've done with the faith-based community. I'm trying to get a project going there as well. I would hope that our councilmen and supervisors would get a backbone. And when we're trying to get a project passed and the neighbors come in and say, we don't want those people living next door, I hope that our supervisors and councilmen and women will say, basically, this is a good use of church property. We're going to vote for it anyway. I think that's a more likely way to get these projects done than this legislation. I'll be surprised if this passes.
Thank you, Kim, for that. I think important reality check, because I will say as we go around, we do hear a lot of comments from local Board of Supervisor members, city council members with that concern about giving up local land use control. So, but we can continue to fight the good fight and do the work, with the faith community partners, which is great. I will say in Navajo, in partnership with APA and other partners of Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy and the Virginia Dyson Homes, which is now, I think, Virginia Real Estate Partners, is hosting a faith-based community engagement session on October the 29th. So hopefully sign up for our newsletter. If you haven't, we'll get you more information about that, but we'll be having a few panels and discussion and an expo for faith community partners who are maybe interested in using their property for affordable housing development or other mission-based uses. So stay tuned for that. Okay, moving on. Kim and Ryan, to what extent are older adults living in the projects your organization has developed? And are there any efforts to intentionally include older adults in family developments?
Go ahead, Ryan, you first.
Great. So I think, you know, we actually, before, Ilda's Overlook, Ilda's Overlook's actually our third senior property. We had done one prior to that in Loudoun, as well as another one in Fairfax County. APA didn't really have, too much experience with, senior housing. It was kind of a new thing. We didn't really start it until the last couple of years. So the bulk of our, projects have been, you know, family ones, where we do have a lot of seniors. I don't know if there's really been any sort of intentional way to like attract seniors to the family versus the senior. I think it all kind of depends on, you know, what the individual tenant would like. I know some of our properties in Arlington, particularly ones very close to the metro, have very little parking. And for some seniors, I know that parking is, you know, having a car is a big issue. So they would probably not want to move into our property that just, you know, got completed over by Boston State, by the Boston Metro stop. That's got a very low parking ratio versus Ilda's Overlook, which basically has about 1-to-1 parking. So it really, I think it just sort of depends on the, you know, the needs of the individual applicant. Luckily, since APA does have a large portfolio, if we have a new applicant that's going to maybe one of our Arlington properties and says, well, I'd like to move here, but I don't have a car, we can usually find another area, another property where they would be able to do, and vice versa. Someone says that, hey, I don't have enough money for my car anymore. I'd really like to move somewhere that's more metro accessible. And then usually we're going to have an opportunity for that as well. So I guess it's kind of gone a little bit off the topic of like intentional moving of seniors into family, regular family properties. I don't think there really has been any specific effort to do that, but we do have a large number of seniors living at our family properties, as well as, of course, our senior communities.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. You know, the issue is that families can't live in elderly properties, but elderly can live in family properties. So, you know, if I'm in and our properties have to respond to the market analysis that we're required to do as part of our justification for Virginia housing. So I tend to build more family properties because that way I can serve both audiences. There's no limitation on letting the elderly folks move in, and we have bunches of them. They like our places. I do have one elderly facility. You know, there is, if you have an all elderly facility, you have a lot more 1-bedroom units and fewer 2-bedroom units, just because that's what elderly folks want. But in the main, I do more family properties because I can serve both and then be flexible to what the market wants. The real challenge for elderly folks is that they have limited incomes, and even getting them into low-income housing tax credit projects is hard because they may not be able to get up to even the minimum rents. And so having more programs that can support the elderly, like project-based vouchers and Section 8 vouchers for the elderly, is, I think our federal government is missing out on that big time. We need a lot more help for our elderly residents, and that's a big national problem that we can't solve locally by ourselves.
That's great. Thank you so much. Following on that, can you talk a little bit about what services are provided at the affordable housing residences for older adults, and who covers those costs to have a social worker, activities coordinator, et cetera? Ryan, maybe you can speak to that through your resident services programs that APA operates.
Sure. So I think as far as the specific services at the senior properties, we've learned that, you know, a lot of that is different than, you know, some of the needs at the family properties. So I know at least I'll speak to a project that we recently completed at in Loudoun County. One of the things that we had done was, you know, finance, you know, particular social workers with the residents, as well as also at Ilda's, we have a van shuttle service that goes between this property as well as another one that we have in Fairfax. And we've looked to, you know, kind of get the funding for that from a couple different sources. Our resident services team has, you know, applied for grants in order to help finance these. Some of it comes out of direct kind of operating costs. And then other, you know, some have been specifically from our fundraising efforts. So I think the best way to say is like a lot of the services provided come from a number of different sources. The general, programming that we have for our residents is mostly done through volunteer donations that we have various people that donate to APA annually. Most of that goes to our resident services programming needs. So the more that we're able to fundraise on our end, the more services that we're able to provide. But in addition to the, the fundraising efforts to provide these services, our resident services team does have a couple partnerships and works to so secure a couple of grants to also help finance these. So
I think you have to realize that, and hats off to APA, they have a 30-year history, more than a 30-year history, and they are actually two organizations in one. They're a service provider, a nonprofit service provider, and they're also an affordable housing developer. That doesn't happen very often. Most affordable housing developers are only affordable housing developers. When I was at Windy Hill Foundation, we started out as a resident service provider and grew into developing affordable housing, but it's uncommon to have both. And there are all kinds of reasons to have resident services, but to date, neither Virginia Housing nor the Lower Income Housing Tax Credit Program allow you to support resident services from the rents. And so if you're going to have those services at a property, it's hard to pay for it. And we need to find more ways and change the rules to let that happen so that, we can find more ways to provide those services. They're very valuable. And I think nothing showed how valuable they were more than COVID. As Ryan knows, because APA had resident services, they had low evictions. At the properties I have where we had resident services, we had low evictions. At the properties where we didn't have those, we had more evictions because getting that money was just very hard. The application process was very hard, and without help, most people that needed it had trouble getting it.
That's a great point, Kim, and thank you both for that answer. Okay, moving slightly, but I think something that we often hear as these affordable housing projects come before our boards and city councils, opponents often cite school overcrowding as their main concern for the opposition. And how have you as developers addressed school overcrowding? It's difficult to respond to because we do have overcrowded schools in some of our jurisdictions. But the school boards often have, those funding sources are separate and different from what local government can decide. So any ways to address that concern that you've seen work? Any talking points to that issue that you see around school overcrowding?
Well, I'll touch that lightly. I think you have to back up and say the biggest thing that's happened in Loudoun County in the last 5 or 6 years is our Chamber of Commerce suddenly discovered that if you don't have workforce, you can't expand your businesses. And so the Loudoun Chamber of Commerce now has attainable housing as one of their top 3 priorities, because if you don't have workers, you can't expand your business. And so with workers come homes and children. And so, as Madam Chair Randall has said in Loudoun, it's the county's job to get that infrastructure ahead of the problem. So, it is a concern, but it's kind of not my problem. My problem is to build the housing for the people that can bring the jobs and do the work. It's up to the jurisdiction to keep up with the schools, and if they're not doing it, shame on them.
Thank you. Any other points, Ryan, that you see that been effective?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what Kim says. It is something that comes up almost every project that we do, particularly like urban areas, they will always come up. Arlington, that's a frequent concern of, neighbors will start something, they say, well, the school's already super crowded. What is all these new students going to be coming to this building? It's going to get more overcrowded. And to the degree, on the one hand, yeah, there are going to be more residents with this new property coming in. There's going to be kids there. So there's going to be more kids going to the school. But that said, the jurisdiction as a whole is also growing. So you look at every jurisdiction around the DMV, they're growing extremely quickly and they're not slowing down anytime soon. So despite whether or not affordable housing is coming or not, the population is going to continue to grow. And I think overcrowding of schools is going to be, continue to be an issue. And I think it's, that is in many ways up to the local school board, the jurisdictions, like, as far as, construction of new schools, just, sort of redistricting as far as like what students would go to which school, just to make sure there's sort of like, an equal amount. So like this school is not completely overcrowded versus this school, has, completely undercrowded. So it's kind of a complicated issue, I think, in many ways. We tell the community members when they bridge that concerns, like, we do hear you. We do know that, our property is gonna, bring some more students, but in the long run, it's not going to be the tipping point of the school being overcrowded, I guess is what I would say.
That's a great point. Just like one development really kind of not altering the school, population is important. So one other question, somebody said they don't see the household income requirements on the ILDA's Overlook website, and how and when is that communicated to prospective tenants? And I think that's a really good question, kind of more broadly, that sometimes it can be hard to find information about when affordable housing units come online on the market and how much they actually are going to cost. So I don't know if it's fully leased yet, Ryan, at ILDA's, or how people can find more information about that.
Sure. So I know we had some leasing advertisements through Fairfax County. As far as the current lease up, it's about 95% leased, and at the end of this week it'll be about 75% occupied. So the lease up's moving quite well. It's actually 52 of the 80 units are occupied as we speak, and we've got 7 move-ins this week. So I think as far as I can talk to our asset management team and property management team as far as putting up the specific income requirements. They do discuss those with any potential residents after they apply, and make sure that they do have the proper income and that there's a unit available, because we do have units that vary between 30% and 60% AMI, and so the income of the particular resident's going to need to fall within that range. But I can certainly check with RN and see what they can do to, make that maybe more clear on the website. It says, this is, the maximum income that you can have. And that way that can, that's helpful, I think, for any website. That way, you don't have people that are grossly over income, applying for units that, they don't realize that they're affordable, their affordability restriction.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it just speaks to the demand for these units, how quickly they lease up. I know for those of the developers, and probably Catherine too, for, you might have waiting lists for projects and for renters to move in, because, certainly the supply is not keeping up with the demand. So often you don't have to post those types of information, but you can always call the property. There's also a website, I think it's virginiahousingsearch.com. So that's actually operated at the state level, and that is specifically for affordable housing. It's only as good as if, people with units that have available publish it there, but it is a start if you are looking for affordable housing in your community. You can search by locality. Okay, we'll keep moving on. We have lots of questions, but I do want to respect time. So one more question, and then I apologize for those we haven't been able to answer. Lots of interest in the topic, so appreciate it. But last question, how will the limited supply of VHDA, Virginia Housing, LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit, to affect the supply of new affordable housing units?
I have on any given day about 200 households on the waiting list at every one of my properties. The only way we're going to fix that is more low-income housing tax credits from the feds, and that's national politics. So everybody that can, write your congressman, because we are so far behind. And the answer is not more money to HUD. I think low-income housing tax credits are the best run program I've ever seen, administered by the states locally. They do a great job. There's just not enough money to go around. So it's a national issue. It's a great place to exercise political pressure.
I think that says it perfectly. And I think on that note, I agree. It's an amazing program. We need it expanded. They've been trying for years at the federal level, but that type of advocacy is really important if you do want to contact your representatives. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kim, Ryan, Catherine. Appreciate your sharing your amazing projects and programs. And thank you all for joining us. And stay tuned for more information about next month's Lunch and Learn will be on public perceptions of zoning. So thank you for joining us today. Take care.